Hello, my dear students of 7th standard. Welcome back to your science lessons. So, I hope you all have thoroughly studied all the 7 chapters that we did so far in science, and I hope you all have thoroughly understood all these 7 chapters. Okay, on that note, we are today going to start our 8th chapter, that is wind, storms and cyclones. So today in this chapter we are going to study about wind, what causes wind, what is wind, and what are the effects of wind, how it influences our daily life. Storms, what are storms and how it affects our lives, and cyclones, how cyclones are formed and what are the reasons the cyclones are formed and how it has affected lives across the globe. So on that note, first let's see. You all know that cyclones and storms have affected our country in many ways year after year, right? So mostly the eastern coast of India is much more affected by the storms than the west coast. So that is the coast that actually borders the Indian Ocean, which actually affects the states which are bordering the east coast are mostly affected by cyclones and storms. So your textbook has given a lot of examples of many places or many states that are affected by cyclones. Go through it and also find out how many more states and what are the recent states that are hit by cyclones. So that you can take it as a homework. So in order to know what cyclones are, what storms are, thunderstorms are, first you have to go back to your basics and learn what is wind and how is wind caused. Even before we know what wind is, you need to know that wind is nothing but it is moving air. So you need to know the characteristics of the movement of the air around us, how this air that is in the atmosphere can transform itself into wind, into storms and into cyclones. So this is what we are going to study in detail in this chapter. So for this, I am actually going to take the examples. There are many activities and examples that are given in this chapter for you guys. I am actually going to follow these examples and activities. So it will make you understand the concept of air and air pressure and wind a little better. So with that, you know that the moving air is nothing but the wind, right? So you also have the picture of the cyclone affected areas of Orissa. That's nothing but the east coast. It lies on the east coast. So let me just show you a picture on the map on the places that are affected on the east coast mostly by cyclone. So there you have the map of India. And we all know that India is a tropical country and it lies on the equator. And we have monsoons. And along with monsoons, we have cyclones too. So the areas that are painted pink, mostly it is the east coast, right? There's the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. So these are the states that are greatly affected, mostly and most persistently and most continuously affected by the cyclones. So of course you have some states in the west coast also that are affected, but mostly it is the east coast, okay, southeast coast. So that's a quick peek at the areas that are affected by cyclones in India. Okay, so having said that, now let's get into one of the activities that you have in your textbook and learn about air and air pressure. Okay, there is an activity that is 8.2 in the figure that's shown here. So for this activity, you need a tin container with a lid, if not a plastic bottle. But let's first see how to do it with a tin container with a lid. Take a tin container with a lid and half fill it with water. And you heat up the tin container as shown in the figure. Okay, so, and once the water starts boiling, take out the tin container carefully. Mind you, my dear students, please do not try any of these experiments at home because these experiments involve fire and hot water. So I recommend you don't do it, but try to understand it. Okay, so coming back, so once the water is boiling, you take out the tin container, put it aside, and pour fresh cold water on the tin container. So when you do that, you see that the shape of the tin container becomes distorted. Okay, so why is this happening? So what happens when fresh cold water is poured on the tin container? The steam, the water is boiling inside the tin container, right? So it's in the form of vapor. So when there is cold water poured on the tin container, this vapor converts itself into water. And hence, when it converts into water, the air inside decreases, the air pressure inside decreases, and the air pressure outside is more than the air pressure inside the tin. So naturally what happens? The tin container compresses. And hence, when the tin container compresses, it loses its shape. So is with the plastic bottle. With the plastic bottle, what you do, you pour boiling hot water into a plastic bottle. Mind you, again, please do not try any of these experiments at home, okay? So take a plastic bottle and pour hot boiling water into that. So once you pour boiling hot water into it, immediately take out the boiling water. Spill the boiling water out. This is just to make the plastic hot enough. So what you do, once you pour out the water from the plastic bottle, you take the lid of the plastic bottle and put it on the warm plastic bottle, what happens? The air inside compresses, the air pressure decreases, and it loses its shape again, right? So, likewise, you see, try and observe, like as they have said it in your textbook, your experiences in flying a kite. When does a kite fly, faster and higher? When, in which direction of the wind does the kite fly higher? Or when you're rowing a boat, so which direction is it easier for you to row? If the wind is blowing towards you or behind you, right? So all these are things that you need to think about and analyze to understand air pressure, because all these things are involved with air pressure. So is your bicycle tire. Why do you fill the air inside your bicycle tire, right? So that's again related to air pressure. So there is another experiment that you need to know. That is activity 8.2. Let's just go through that also. It says, take a bottle and take a piece of paper and crumple it to the size much lesser than the mouth of the bottle, and put the crumpled piece of paper in the front of the bottle near your mouth and try to blow it. What happens? If you blow the paper, it hits the end of the bottle and comes back to you, right? So, why does this happen? And again, another activity 8.3. So there are 3 activities that we will just look into to see what kind of effect air pressure has on the substances. Okay. So in this activity 8.3, they asked you to fill 2 balloons with water and tie them on a stick as shown here. Okay. So hang them apart between 8 to 10 centimeters and try to blow the space in between the balloons and see what happens. That's activity 2. Activity 3. Take a piece of strip of paper. You must have all done this activity 8.5. I have done it as a child myself. And keep it at the tip of your lip and try to blow on the paper and see what happens. So now let us analyze all these activities that we have seen. So in activity 8.2, when you blew the crumpled paper ball into the bottle, what happens? The paper hits the wall of the bottle and comes back near the entrance. Why is this? Because the air near the mouth of the bottle has much higher speed, but it has a decreased pressure near the entrance of the bottle. But on the other hand, the pressure at the end of the bottle is much higher. That's why it pushes the crumpled paper back towards the mouth of the bottle, right? Likewise, in activity 3, when you blew in between the balloons, what happens? You see that the balloons actually came towards each other. Why is that? Because the pressure of air between the balloons was reduced. The air pressure between the balloons reduces and it brings both the balloons towards each other. Similarly, when you blow into a strip of paper, the pressure on the strip of the air pressure on the strip of the paper actually reduces, which actually sends the strip of paper flying up than under the strip of the paper, right? The air pressure on top of the strip of the paper actually reduces as compared to the bottom of the strip of the paper. Hence, it actually flies up. So with all these 3 activities, what do you conclude? You conclude that when there is an increased speed of wind, there is always a reduced air pressure. That means the speed of wind is inversely proportionate to the air pressure. That means when the wind speed is high, the air pressure is low, right? Opposite is when the wind speed is low, the air pressure is high, right? So the wind speed and the air pressure are inversely proportional. When the wind speed is high, the air pressure is naturally low or reduced. Having said this, we need to know first of all what causes these winds, right? How is this movement of air, which is called wind, happen, and how does this affect the substances around us? For that, there is another activity that is shown to you all. Let us do that activity that is given here in this particular figure 8.6, where it involves a balloon, a boiling tube, and a beaker with some cold and hot water. So let's try and understand this activity. In this activity, we are going to learn that air moves from a high pressure area to a low pressure area. Okay? And the greater the pressure difference, the faster the air moves. So in order to know how this air pressure actually makes a lot of difference in the movement of air, let's just take this activity. Take 3 beakers. In the first beaker, you place a boiling tube and fit it with a balloon. And in the second beaker, take boiling water or hot water, place the boiling tube in it and fit it with a balloon. In the third beaker, take cold water, place the boiling tube in it and fix its end with a balloon. And see and observe this particular activity or experiment for a couple of minutes. As shown in the figure, what do you see? You see the balloon that is fitted with a boiling tube to the beaker that has hot water actually is inflated. So, with this experiment, we can conclude that actually air expands, right? Air expands on heating. Whenever there is hot air expands and it moves up. And when the hot air expands and moves up, automatically that space that the hot air had previously taken, which has gone up now, is being taken by the cold air. The cold air just takes its place. When the hot air expands and moves up, the cold air takes its place because the cold air is much denser than the hot air and it is under, and the hot air expands and moves up. So that shows that the experiment where it says that air moves from the region where the air pressure is higher to the region where the pressure is low, right? The air moves from the region where the pressure is high to the region where the pressure is low. So when the hot air expands up, the cool air takes its place. So it's moving from a region of high pressure to the region where there is low pressure. Okay. So there's another activity also that you need to know or you can understand. Air pressure. We will go through that. Even in this experiment, you know that air pressure moves from region of high pressure. Air moves from the region of high pressure to the low pressure. So, okay, take a look at this figure in activity 8.7. Here, you can take empty paper bags or empty paper cups or plastic bags or plastic cups, tie them in this manner apart on a metal string or a cycle spoke, as it says in your textbook, and hold one of the paper bags a little far away under the candle. So it doesn't burn, but the plastic bag receives some of the heat. So what happens? Immediately the balance that it had, this balance is lost because the plastic bag which was under the flame of the candle moves up. That is to show that air, when it becomes warm, becomes lighter, right? It becomes lighter. So warm air is lighter than cold air, right? The air inside this plastic bag, which was cold when it was equal here, when it warms up, it goes up because warm air lightens up. It becomes lighter in weight. Hence, warm air is lighter than the cold air. So it is very natural. So all these things help you understand in the further sessions how this wind actually generates the windstorms or cyclones, or how rain happens, or how monsoons happen even. Okay, so with this note, we are going to end our session here, and we will actually come back in the next session with interesting topics on cyclones and windstorms. So, having said that, now let's move on to your part of the work, what you are supposed to do. You are supposed to do your homework. For that, I want you all to thoroughly read the whole book, whole chapter 8, okay, before you come back for the class. And let us take some of the activities and see some of the questions that you can answer. Okay. So the first question being, what is wind? How do you describe wind? Okay. What is wind and how do you describe wind? Second question being, does air exert pressure? If so, give examples or try to explain it with an experiment that you know. Third question, high-speed winds are accompanied by reduced air pressure. So when the wind is high, when the speed of the wind is high, the pressure of air is low. So if this is true, try to give at least 2 experiments or 2 examples or 2 activities that you know of. Okay? And that is your second question, right? But I already gave you one question at the beginning when we were talking about the cyclones, right? You need to draw a map of India and mark the cyclone prone areas. And also I want you all to have a record of the recent cyclone hit places in India. Okay? That would be your homework too. That makes 3 questions. And I have another one for that. So, air expands on heating. So, how do you explain air expands on heating? Give both the experiments that you know of. Okay? So you can give both the examples that I just explained to you all about the boiling tube experiment with the balloon and also the plastic cover experiment balancing out on the metal rod. So, the last one, warm air is lighter than cold air. Do you agree? Okay. The previous question was, what was your previous question? It was on the air expansion. Air expands on heating, right? It expands on heating. How do you explain? You can actually give 2 experiments. The experiment in figure 8.6 and also the experiment that we saw in figure 8.7. And does this also prove that warm air rises up and warm air is lighter than cold air? So, do all these questions, read your textbook lesson and listen to the lecture, listen to my explanation, and I'll come back and explain to you all the other concepts that are related to wind. That is the cyclones, the windstorms, and also the monsoons and the rains that happen in our country due to these wind movements and air pressure movements or wind pressure movements. Okay, so with that, we will end our session. I'll come back to you all with the next session. Okay, till then, take care, bye-bye, and stay safe, my dear students.